welcome back to this investigative video where we have been examining the idea that the original Hebrew of the Bible does not talk about one but multiple gods. We are also looking into the idea that the Hebrew names of gods, the Hebrew name of God are actually the names of Canaanite or pagan deities. Now, before I go on, I recommend that if this is your first time watching this, you watch part 1 and part 2, because this is going to be a continuation of what I was speaking about earlier. And I will recap on some things and go over them again, but not in a lot of detail. Now, in my previous video, part 2, I asked the question, who is sin? And it's a peculiar thing to ask because we don't see sin as a person. In theology, sin is a kind of action that is immoral or unethical. But the earliest mentions we have of sin in ancient texts refer to sin as a deity. Believe it or not, sin was actually the Sumerian moon god, who was also known as Nana. And as I spoke about previously, said here, Nana, also called Sin or Sin, was a Sumerian god who played a long-standing role in the Mesopotamian religion and mythology. He was the god of the moon. The sun, the son of the sky god. So that is quite peculiar, and also spoke about how the ancient Sumerians used to sacrifice a bull for sin, for their god Sin, and how the Hebrews would sacrifice an animal for the atonement or the forgiveness of their sin. But something I just want to quickly talk about before I move on, and I said I would mention this in my previous part, and that is how sin didn't only just affect the Christian religion, it also had a large influence on the Muslim belief. Now, if we look at the symbol of sin, it says either the bull or the crescent. And when it talks about the crescent, it means the crescent moon. Here you can see there's a moon here in this image. And if we go down here in the New World Encyclopedia, you can see that sin was often represented by a crescent moon. It was also symbolized as a bull because a lot of Sumerian Canaanite gods were associated with the bull. But also, if you can imagine a bull, its horns almost look like a crescent moon. So the crescent would also represent the horns of the bull. Here, if you can see, there's an image of the bull, and the horns here almost look like a crescent moon. So going back to a depiction of sin, this is one of them. We can see the crescent moon turned over on its side and a star in the middle. And this ancient symbol was eventually what influenced the Muslim belief system. If you write your Muslim symbol, you can see it's the moon and the star. And if you learn about the story of Muhammad, it actually makes a lot of sense because he was actually born into a pagan belief system, you know, the Sumerian pagan one, and they used to worship Canaanite gods. And when he took over the city of Mecca, he still kept some of the pagan ideas, and this is an example of one of them. He took the symbol of sin. Another influence, I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's known as the Kaaba stone. So every single year, millions of Muslims go to the city of Mecca, which is the same city Muhammad was born in, and they worship this stone here. It's known as the Kaaba stone, and it's actually quite a holy symbol in Islam. Now, in the original pagan religion, they believed that it was a stone that fell from heaven. from the sky, and that's why they worshipped it. Now, when Muhammad took over the city of Mecca, he destroyed all the idols and everything, but for some reason, he kept the stone and he kept the practice of worshipping it. So, as you can see, sin was actually quite a influential god that affected a lot of other religions. He also affected many ancient religions. If you look at that crescent and moon symbol that's found in Islam, and it's also the symbol of sin, it also appears in ancient Egyptian mythology. If you look at many of the gods, such as Hathor, Hathor has an adaptation of the symbol where, so before it was the crescent and the moon, or the that crescent and the star in the middle, and here you have a crescent shape and a star, which in this case is actually the sun. The Egyptian adaptation is kind of like the sun setting or rising on the horizon, but it's still got that crescent shape, kind of like the ancient symbol of sin, which was the crescent horns of the moon. Isis also has the same thing. Over here, as you can check, it's the crescent and star thing in the center. And now, moving away from sin, I want to mention another god, which is Shamash. And to explain this god, I want to go to a verse in the Bible. It's in Malachi chapter 4, verse 2. And this is probably one of the most pagan verses that I've ever come across. And you wouldn't notice it at first glance, but then when you look at things like the ancient Hebrew or Sumerian belief system, you find a lot of references to paganism here. So this is God speaking, and it goes, "But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in its wings, and ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall." Now, the word here that says son, my name shall the Son, if we look at the original Hebrew and we click on it, okay, the word here is shemesh. And what does shemesh mean in Hebrew? It says, from an unused root meaning to be brilliant, the sun, by implication of the east, figuratively a ray, and it goes on to say some other stuff, but the interesting point here is sun and shemesh. Now, if we go back here, we see that that Shamash was actually a god in Mesopotamia. The only difference between the two, the Hebrew word Shemesh and Shamash, is the vowels. The god Shamash has an A and the Hebrew has an E, but that's not really much of a problem when you understand and I'm right now looking at Wikipedia on the Hebrew alphabet. It's not much of a problem when you understand that Hebrew is written from right to left. Originally, the alphabet was abjad, consisting only of consonants. So the original Hebrew didn't have vowels. So this wouldn't have even said Shemesh. It would have just been like all the consonants without the vowels in between. So it could have actually might as well said Shamash. But what's interesting was Shamash, if you read from Wikipedia, was a sun god. Also the god of salvation, the god of justice, and the god of divination. Well, this verse says, but those that fear my name shall the Son, there we go again, the Son of Righteousness, and Shemesh in Hebrew basically means son. So there we find some pagan influence going into the Bible, but when we read the verse even more, we see that the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in its wings. That's the second interesting key point. Wings, or his wings. If we look at some images of Shamash here, we'll go down. One of the ways in which he was depicted was as a sun or a winged disc with two wings. And it's kind of like, because the sun kind of floats in the sky as if it's flying, so they would often depict the sun with wings. So again, if, when that verse says with healing in his wings, it's making reference to this Canaanite god. Let's look at some other images. Here we go again. And here you can see the god in the center. It says male figure in Assyrian winged sun emblem, because the winged sun emblem would represent this god. And then this, if we go up here, it goes the star, its symbol was a star, sun symbol, winged sun, or the lion. So interesting association there. Furthermore, something else that that points out that this verse isn't talking about the physical sun in the sky is the fact that it uses he's as part of this verse, in his wings. So obviously the sun is a person. When this verse talks about the sun, it's actually talking about a person. So that gives some more evidence that it's mentioning a deity here. But I think one of the most strongest evidence is this: and ye shall go forth and grow up as calves. Many of the Canaanite or pagan gods were represented as bulls and cows, and a calf is basically a baby cow or bull. So as I said before, if we look at the god Sin, its symbol was the bull. And if we look at Shamash, okay, if I'm going here, I'm looking at Shamash, and I were to type bull, it says, Shamash guides Gilgamesh through dreams, appearing to him as a wild bull. So even he has some association with this animal. Now, the gods are the ones that created human beings on earth. So if they are like bulls or cows, it would make sense for us to be like the calves of these bulls, like little baby calves, because we are kind of like their children. I suppose you could associate it to how in Christianity we are like the sons of God. Well, we are like the calves of, these main gods known as Shemesh. So that in itself is pretty peculiar. Also, the bull was quite a spiritual animal, actually, in ancient mythology. Just one last thing about the winged disc. I've been reading a lot of ancient texts, and it kind of appears all over the place. Here's something from ancient Egypt that talks about it. I'm reading from sacredtext.com, and the title of this is The Legend of HERU-BEHUTET and the Winged Disc. So this is from hieroglyphics, and they've been translated into English. This is actually a very great website if you want to look at ancient works and understand them. It gives you texts from way back, and it has them all translated in English. But here it says, the text of this legend is cut in hieroglyphics on a wall of the temple of Edfu in Upper Egypt. Okay, and if we go down here, this is actually quite interesting. It says, him that his foes were conspiring against him, Ra-Hamakis in answer addressed HERU-BEHUTET as his son, and commanded him to set out without delay and slay the wicked rebels. Then HERU-BEHUTET took the form of a great winged disc. So here we have a verse that says this god actually took the form of this winged disc and flew. And here in the Zoroastrian religion, so here we have another pagan religion that this Bible verse, is kind of matching with. It's the Zoroastrian religion, and their god or their messiah actually came down in a winged disc. I actually find this winged disc in a lot of ancient cultures, and either the gods would fly in it or become it. Horus, actually, the Egyptian god Horus, came down in a winged disc. Right, Horus, the winged disc of Horus. There we go. See what we find here. There we go. So this would be an example of the winged disc. of Horus, and I have a lot to talk about on this topic alone, about these winged discs or flying arcs from the heaven, but I would save that for another video in the future, because this one's about discussing pagan references and polytheism in the ancient Hebrew of the Bible. So I'll continue on with my next video and discuss some things such as how the word we use, Lord, the word Lord actually originated from the name Baal. So stay tuned.